the laws of peppercorns, brachos on peppercorns, and we spoke about the interesting case of a person wanting to chew on peppercorn on Yom Kippur. Would that be considered eating? Would that be a transgression of Yom Kippur to obligate to make someone receive the punishment of eating on Yom Kippur? And the Gemara mentioned that pilpuli, the peppercorns, there's an argument. Rav Shesha says you recite a bracha shahakol. If you eat peppercorns, you recite shahakol. And Rava said you don't recite any bracha. Now, I wish I knew the practicality of the peppercorns. When we buy peppercorns in the store, I wonder if we would call them fresh or dried. If you buy peppercorns, I guess they're dried, right? If you're buying peppercorns.
Definitely dried. Yeah.
Definitely dried, huh? And even the ones that Edith was showing us yesterday, you would call them dried? You think so?
Yes, we're dry.
I would. You wouldn't find them in a jar if it wasn't dried first, because they're not grown in every place. And
Right.
they sold in many places that are not growing.
Right, right. Okay. Susan, what did you want to say?
Green peppercorns have a different flavor. Ones that are not dried, ones that are not ripe.
Uh-huh.
There are many different kinds of peppercorns. The
Yeah,
ones that we
that's
buy are
correct.
all dried.
They're all dried, right. Okay, okay.
Rabbi,
And yes, Moshe.
there are some that are mixed too. You can get them mixed. You get green, red ones, white ones, they have black ones. They're all mixed, and some of them are not as dry as the other ones are. Like the red ones may be, they're still sort of moist in some ways, you know what I'm saying? The black ones
Right.
are usually dried out, but the other ones are not. So I mean, they're mixed together, you know.
Uh-huh. Interesting. Interesting. So we were mentioning yesterday that, you know, obviously it's not so practical for someone to eat peppercorns, but the Gemara does discuss what the halacha would be. And you know, one of the things I really dislike is when you ask a rabbi a question and they say, well, why would you want to do it? Instead of answering the question. So it's like you ask a rabbi what bracha would be on peppercorns. I really dislike when they say, well, why would you want to eat peppercorns? Why are you eating peppercorns? Answer the question. What is the bracha on peppercorns? That's what I want to know. So here we're learning what the bracha is. So the bracha on peppercorns is an argument between Rav Sheshas and Rava. And Rav Shesha says shahakol. Rava says no bracha at all. And Rava's statement fits with what Rava says about Yom Kippur. Because Yom Kippur, we said if you eat, you chew on the peppercorns and you eat it, the halacha is that you are putter, you're exempt from punishment. Then the same thing would apply with znagbilo, which is ginger. You would chew on ginger, you would also be putter on Yom Kippur. And the reason is because it's not considered a food, and that's why Rava holds you do not even recite a bracha in the first place. So if you eat peppercorns, according to Rava, you don't recite a bracha. It's not a food. You don't get punished for eating it on Yom Kippur. That's what he holds. It's not a food at all. And the Gemara had a contradiction with this from the laws of Arla, because in the laws of Arla, we find it is a food. In fact, we find that it says specifically Arla applies to a tree that the wood of the tree tastes like the fruit of the tree. And that tells us pretty clearly that the peppercorn is considered a tree. If it's considered a tree, and that's considered the fruit of the tree, and you have to keep the laws of Arla, so obviously this is edible. And the answer the Gemara gives is that there's a difference between fresh peppercorns and dried peppercorns. And If they're dried peppercorns, they are inedible. If they're fresh peppercorns, they are edible, at least according to Rava. They're inedible if they're dried, and if they're fresh, they are edible. And that's what the conclusion of the Gemara that we learned yesterday said. Now, what is the bracha on peppercorns? That's going to be our next question. But first, I want to see, Yehuda, you had something you wanted to say.
Yeah, if you chew gum on Yom Kippur, is that, do you say a bracha?
I have to be honest with you. I haven't chewed gum in many years.
I haven't either, but you said that if you have a question.
So I have to think about this. 1 second. So let's think. Now, do you recite a bracha on gum?
In gum, what you swallow is actually sugar. You don't swallow the gum itself.
Right. That's, we hope. Right. So it would seem that you recite a shahakol on gum. I just want to make sure that I have a book here, The Laws of Brochos. And let me just make sure that they agree. It makes sense. You're swallowing gum, right? You're swallowing sugar. So you should recite a shahakol. Let me just, there's no after bracha, that's for sure, because you eat so little. But let me just make sure, because gum shahakol. Yes, they say you recite shahakol. Now, so you're asking about Yom Kippur. In Yom Kippur, I mean, this would obviously be prohibited. It is considered a chatzi shir. You're eating less than the amount of that one would be punished for, because you're eating a small measurement. So interestingly enough, you would be exempt, but it would be prohibited. It's considered chatzi shir, a portion. You're eating less than the amount that a person gets punished for, but it's still prohibited in the Torah. Chatzi shir, less than the measurement, is prohibited in the Torah. So again, you would not be allowed to chew gum on Yom Kippur. It would be considered eating. Does that answer the question, Yehuda?
Partially, but how does that tie in with the peppercorn?
So the peppercorn is a different category. Peppercorn is not even edible. There's no sugar that you're absorbing. The gum, you're absorbing sugar. You're enjoying the taste, and the sugar is going down your palate. And so you would need a bracha on the gum. However, on the peppercorn, you're getting zero enjoyment. And therefore, there's no bracha at all. It's not called food even. At least the gum, the sugar is called the food.
Okay, so then what's the point of chewing the peppercorn?
So why is the person doing this? So we don't know. The Gemara doesn't tell us, but it mentions to us what would be the halacha if someone does eat the peppercorn. Would you recite a bracha? And the answer is no. It would be like if someone wanted to eat sand. Would you recite a bracha? Why would they eat the sand? I don't know. But they want to eat some sand. So the answer is it's not a food. You don't recite a bracha.
Thank you.
If you eat grass, I guess it would be the same thing if you wanted to eat grass. I don't think grass is edible. Maybe I'm wrong. Well, wheat, there's certain types of grass maybe that are edible, right? But regular grass, I don't think is considered edible. So, right? So if someone wanted to eat grass, would you say ha'adama on the grass or shahako? It would seem that you don't recite a bracha on it. I would think. I don't know. Again, I'm not so familiar. Maybe people who are big into camping, maybe they know, and hiking. Maybe they have different. Maybe there's a different food dictionary for them. But okay, let's see. Ben, you had a question.
Yeah, I wanted to say there are really two issues here. One is on Yom Kippur, you really don't want to enjoy anything. And when you eat the pepper, even if you don't like it, you're still activating your taste buds. And I would say that it's not something that you should do on a day like Yom Kippur. The other issue is whether you say a bracha or not. You probably should not say the bracha because it's not food, but it activates your food buds.
Well, there is no bracha. We just said that you don't
That's what I'm
recite a
saying. That's
Right.
one issue. There is no bracha, that's fine. But you shouldn't do it on Yom Kippur is what I'm saying.
Right. So you want to mention that you still shouldn't do it, even though a person is exempt, but you should not do it on Yom Kippur. Now,
Because of the seriousness of the day and you know.
so let me tell you, the Rav Yah, who is a halacha sefer, he writes, he argues with the Rambam about this thing. So what you're discussing is actually talked about in the commentaries. The Rav Yah writes that even in the first place, you are allowed to chew on dried pepper. And you would be allowed to chew on dried pepper, but it's really, but the Rambam holds that it's prohibited. And why does it say a case that you're putter, you're exempt?
Rabbi, I think I have an answer.
Yeah, I'm trying. Yeah, what's the answer?
Because sometimes, like for instance, in Rambam, he says you're not liable, but you're still not allowed to do it. There's not.
No. That's the Rambam's view. I'm trying to figure out the Rav Yah's view. If you're allowed to do it, why does it just say putter and not say mutter? It should say you're allowed to. And instead it says putter, you're exempt, which implies, like the Rambam, that you're really not allowed to in the first place. If you did it, you're putter, you're exempt. But it does say, according to the Rav Yah, I would think it should say mutter, you're allowed to do this. So I see they talk about it, and I'm just looking.
I'm thinking that putter means that it's mutter, it's not allowed. However, you're putter from a punishment. You don't have to bring a korban. You don't have to you don't have to repent on the thing. It's not permitted to do, but at the same time, you're not supposed to do it because you're not. There's a liability or not liability because there's not a punishment involved, but you're still not allowed to do it.
What you're saying is the Rambam's view.
I think Rambam's view in many things where he says something is a person's not liable, but at the same time you're not permitted to do the thing.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's the logical view here. It fits with the wording. It is very common. Sometimes you don't get punished, but it's still prohibited. And
Rabbi Ezra has his hand up.
Okay,
Ezra.
1 second. Why, David, do you think that if it's not considered a food, why do you think it should be prohibited?
It says in the Steinsaltz, it says eating sharp spices is an uncommon practice, and therefore it's not considered to be eating, which is prohibited on Yom Kippur. So it's not considered to be eating, but at the same time, it may not be allowed because you follow what I'm saying? It's prohibited in that it doesn't incur a penalty, but at the same time,
But why? Why would it be prohibited? What would the reason be?
Because it is giving you a certain benefit through your mouth. Like, for instance, you can smell spices that's giving you a benefit on Yom Kippur, and you're allowed to do that and even encouraged to do that. But to benefit in something that through your mouth, even though so it's permitted because it's not considered the normal way of eating, because it's a sharp spice and it's so uncommon to do such a thing. But at the same time, it may be permitted because it's not really well, you can continue my thought afterwards. I'm sort of losing myself.
Okay, yes, Ezra.
And so when you asked the question, who the heck would eat the peppercorn? And I thought to myself, perhaps there's a health benefit. So I went on to the internet.
Yeah.
And these are, I found several websites. One of them says 7 health benefits of peppercorns. One is that peppercorn helps fight cancer. Peppercorns may aid in indigestion. Peppercorns can assist in energy production, may improve dental health, may help skin conditions, may help with weight loss, may improve bone health. And so there is a health benefit to peppercorns. So that
But
might be
that's
the
long
reason why,
time.
excuse me?
It's long time. It's not exactly on that day that you have to eat it.
But the point is, why would one chew it? And here's here are reasons why one would chew it. Otherwise, why would the Gemara even discuss it?
Right.
Rabbi?
I think that's, I'm glad you brought that up, Ezra.
Rabbi,
Ezra has clarified for us that there is benefits of eating, but because of those benefits, you would not say a bracha. But maybe if there's a taste, if the Gemara says that, there are some, enjoyment benefits, then you would say a bracha. So again, if it was just the health benefits, there's not a bracha because of that, but that would be the reason someone's eating it. Thank you, Ezra. That's great. I'm glad you looked that up.
Rabbi,
Yes, Moshe.
Rabbi.
Yes.
First of all, many dentists use peppercorns. They put them in their mouth before they see a patient. They call cloves. I guess that's another name for cloves. I guess I don't know, but they do put them in their mouth to get rid of any bad breath. For also, but you have to understand that they also do provide a flavor. Many people chew on them for a flavor. There's, like I said, there's different. I guess there's different species of them. These red ones, green ones, and they do offer a different flavor than the other ones do. So maybe people chew others for that flavor as opposed to maybe the black ones, which may just be dried and like a form of pepper. But they do. It's used for flavoring the mouth. For the purpose of keeping the breath clean, and also for a lot of people chew on them, just for the flavor too. The red ones, for example, green ones, red ones, as we pointed out earlier, But
So you're saying your dentist chews on peppercorns before he sees you?
I'm not saying my dentist. I'm not saying my dentist necessarily. I worked in a dental office. I worked as a dental lab technician. I was working as a dental lab technician, and I know that when I worked with the dentist, he used to put a peppercorn in his mouth, in order to clean his breath. A lot of they do that. So.
They breathe on you. Dentists breathe on you, so they really have an obligation to make sure not to have
over a patient. There's one of the each. That's right, because if he doesn't eat on time or something, it may develop, bad breath as a result of this. So they put that in their mouth. You see.
Right. Right. Very interesting. Okay. So what you're really saying, you're asking a question, really, Moshe. You're saying that it would seem that there is some type of flavor there that a person is benefiting from and swallowing.
Yes.
And maybe that would be, even though they're dried, you're really asking a question that they are dried and there is some type of a benefit. Now, if it's just for the breath, that would not be called a benefit you would recite a bracha on. But you're thinking that there's more than just the getting a nice breath. It's like, when you smoke a pipe, you also have a very nice breath, smell after smoking a pipe, not a cigarette, but a pipe. And that, you don't say a bracha on, even though it's given.
But they put flavoring in the. I don't smoke,
What?
but they put flavoring in the tobaccos. That's not the same as just smoking tobacco without flavoring. I mean,
Right,
I don't know.
Well, let me
if
give a
there's
better
anything, but
example. When you take mouthwash, you also get yourself a nice breath, but it doesn't. You don't say a bracha on it. But the thing is, you're wondering if maybe some of the flavor of the pepper, maybe you're enjoying that flavor and it's you're swallowing it. In other words, it's not
well,
as
you're ingesting
inedible.
it.
You're
You're
ingesting a
ingesting
little
it in order-
mouthwash also, but the mouthwash you would call it would be considered inedible, right? But you're saying the peppercorns are a little more edible than the mouthwash, even though like you're probably ingesting a little, from the mouthwash as well. A drop is going down, you're spitting it out, but a little stays on your teeth. So you're saying, should you recite a bracha on mouthwash? Because there is a drop that
It may be being used to suppress the hunger by ingesting it, so that it doesn't create bad breath. You see. So how does that play into it?
I think that's taking it a little too far, suppressing hunger. I think you
But
have a good question.
But a mint suppresses hunger if you take it. A lot of times it suppresses hunger. You're using it for the breath and for suppressing the hunger many times. So I'm saying I think it does have the same kind of, because it does have like a soothing feeling when you swallow the peppercorn, but it also cleans the breath. It acts as an absorption of any bad breath that you might have.
Right. Okay. Well, anyway, what it boils down to, our question really is if you're enjoying the flavor of the dried pepper as it goes down your palate.
I see.
That would be the question. And I guess the Gemara is assuming here not, unless you want to say that this is the argument of Rav Sheshis and Rava, that Rav Sheshis says you do enjoy it a little and Rava says no, 0, and maybe that's what they're arguing about. But what it sounds like is they're claiming that you're not enjoying the flavor. It's hanas cheich. It's the enjoyment of the throat, ingesting the enjoyment of the ingesting of this flavor. Yes, Ben.
I wasn't arguing the issue of the bracha, but I'm still saying on a fast day,
right,
you shouldn't put anything in your mouth, not water, not anything else.
So that's
that's broad. Put pepper in there.
Right.
It's not.
What you're saying,
right. It's not right to do it.
Right. What you're saying is broad in Shulchan Aruch, that really a person shouldn't even wash their mouth out on a fast day, right. And the thing is that there are leniencies. There is a leniency of washing your mouth out with something that's inedible. If you have a bad breath and other people, you're hurting other people and so on, there is a heter that's brought in, I believe it's in the Mishnah Berurah about washing one's mouth. Better to wash it out with like a bad tasting thing like mouthwash than to wash it out with water, because washing it out with water, it's considered like food, and some could go down. A little goes down, could be considered like you're eating. Washing it out with mouthwash, at least it's not edible, and therefore, you're what you're doing is not, it's better not to, as you're saying. You shouldn't really put anything in your mouth. But it would seem from this Gemara, the way the Rav Yah is learning, is that it's not a problem to put something in your mouth regarding even on Yom Kippur. But the Rambam argues, and I guess we follow like the Rambam, and that's why we're careful even on rabbinic fast days. We don't wash out our mouth, even though for davening you really should wash your mouth out before you daven. But on a fast day, even a rabbinic fast day, we don't do that. And so what you're saying is correct, Ben. Okay, so in any event, let's go back to our Gemara. We're talking about these peppercorns, and we said that there was an argument about peppercorns. Then we said, and ultimately we concluded that peppercorns are going to be the It depends if it's fresh or dry. And if they're fresh, if they're moist, then there is a bracha to be recited on. So what bracha do you think should be on peppercorns if they're moist?
Yeah, cool.
You think shahakol, Ezra? Ezra think no. Now keep in mind that the Gemara, when it mentioned the bracha, was talking about dried ones, and it said one opinion was shahakol, the other opinion is no bracha. And now I'm talking about moist ones. So moist ones, and we just concluded that it has the law of Arla. The tree of the peppercorns are actually included in the laws of Arla, which means that they have the laws of a fruit tree. The peppercorn tree is even though it's a vine, it's not a tree, it's a vine. It's small, but it would be considered a tree regarding Arla. So the question is, what would the bracha be on peppercorns? Now, I must tell you, so logically you would say ha'es, right? However, if you look in the Shulchan Aruch and the Tur, they seem to want to say ha'adama. You would say the blessing of fruit that grows from the ground. Even though our Gemara says it's Arla. Arla means it's a fruit tree that you got to wait 3 years for. And the laws of Arla don't apply to vegetables. So it's definitely considered a fruit tree. You see from the wording, eights, the Gemara is learning that this is not only a tree, even the bark of it, even the wood of it tastes like a tree. It has the laws of Arla. It's for sure a tree. And yet we're saying to recite, at least according to some opinions, Bari Priya Dama. Now, the Torah writes, Pilpul Retivta Bari Priya Eitz. He does say it's Bari Priya Eitz, but if you look at the commentaries over here, the Rif says Bari Priya Dama, and the Rav Hai Goyin says Bari Priya Dama, and the Rambam says Bari Priya Dama. So we got a lot of opinions that say Bari Priya Dama. And but there are some that say Bari Priya Eitz. Now, if it's dry, everyone agrees you don't say any bracha. No bracha on dry. But the question is, if it's fresh, if it's moist, why do you say ha'adama if it's a fruit tree? We know it's considered a vine and it's considered a tree. It has the laws of Arla. And even though maybe it's not probable that it'll give off fruit in the first 3 years, but it's possible that maybe there would be a 1 or 2 fruits from it. It would have peppercorn. So the question is, why is it ha'adama according to many opinions? And the answer is that what do people really plant this peppercorn for? They plant it for the spice that's ground from the dried peppers. It's not planted for fresh peppercorns for people to eat. They're planting it for the dried peppers afterwards that you grind and make a spice out of. This is not the fruit. This is if you take a peppercorn, I understand you're eating the peppercorn, but the reason why it's planted is not for this food of the peppercorn that's moist, that does have some flavor, but that's not really the fruit of the tree. That's eaten in an abnormal way. The norm is the reason why it's being planted. And so because of that, it doesn't maintain the status of Beirei Pri Ha'etz, the real fruit of the tree. It ends up, you're eating it in a way, in a method that's not what it's meant for. But because some people do eat it this way, and when they plant it, they do have in mind that some people will eat it in this abnormal way of eating it fresh and eating it straight from and just eating the fresh peppercorns. Therefore, it doesn't have the din of shahakol, but it does have the law of ha'adama. So what we're seeing here is the source of how items get their brachas, and they're getting, these are exceptions from the norm. These are cases of exception, and we're seeing them. One case of exception we learned earlier was called the shoots of the hearts of palm. The shoots of the palm, the shoots of the palm tree. That we said earlier was considered shahako, even though it's a growth from the tree, but they don't plant the tree for the kaira, for these shoots of the palm tree, and that gets the bracha shahako. And the reason is because it ruins the tree. You don't plant the tree for that fruit. But the peppercorns, there are some people that are going to eat it raw and fresh. And because there are some people going to eat it fresh, and they plant it for those people as well, but only because some people are going to do that. And that's not the main reason. Therefore, it loses ha'etz bracha, but it is still considered a growth from the ground. It's still considered a ha'adama. So again, we've seen some exclusions from the bracha ha'etz on fruits. What are the exclusions? One of them is something comes from the tree that's from the shoots, shahako. We've seen the case of the caper bush, and that had very interesting halachas. We were talking about the caper bush. Would the husks of the caper bush, what bracha would they be? And we said the husks should be ha'etz according to some opinions, but according to other opinions, the husks would be ha'adama. And that was a discussion that we were dealing with, because we even mentioned the view. The reason it should be ha'adama was because if you're eating the husks outside of Israel, and it's from a tree that's arla, so it would be considered a karti de sasri, a contradiction of saying ha'etz on a fruit that's young within the first 3 years. So that was an issue. We said that might be a reason why it's ha'adam according to some opinions. And we also said that according to Rabbi Akiva, another reason why it would be ha'adama is if you've paskin like Rabbi Akiva that said the only fruit is the actual caper berries, and nothing else on that tree is considered the fruit, so that the husk would not be considered the fruit, and that would be considered ha'adama. And now we're learning about the pilpulin, that according to some Itaites, the pilpulin, the peppers, the fresh peppercorns, the fresh peppercorn. But according to some, it would be ha'adama. And obviously in Shulchan Aruch, because we're worried that you might say the wrong bracha, it would be better to say ha'adama, because ha'adama is more inclusive, because you'd fulfill according to all opinions if you say the bracha ha'adama. So this is how we're going to have